from 4 judicial nominees: Judge Embry Kidd, nominated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit; Judge Adam Abelson, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland; Judge Joseph Saporito, to the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania; and Judge Meredith Vaca, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Western District of New York. Congratulations to the nominees and their families. I'll have the privilege of introducing Judge Kidd. There are also visiting senators here to introduce nominees from their home state. But now Senator Lee, representing the minority on the committee, has an opportunity for opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's an important day. Anytime we're considering judicial nominees, it's an important day for America. It's important to have independence within our judicial system. We talk about this all the time, and it can't be repeated too often, but I think that needs to be repeated today. Today, especially as we look at what has happened with the political weaponization of our judicial system. We've got a sitting president whose party has indicted, whose party has now secured the conviction of his only impediment toward being elected for a second term. This has never happened in our country, and I hope it will never happen again in our country, but it's something that we've got to watch out for. It's something that sends a strong signal of a lack of judicial independence. This coupled with a lot of irregularities from the judge, irregularities from the way that we've got prominent Justice Department official who went to assist with the prosecution. We've got 3 members of a prominent law firm, the Paul Weiss firm in New York City, high-paid lawyers who were given paid leaves of absence to go and assist in the prosecution. We've got to be concerned about this. And so as we obsess one day about flags flown outside the home of a Supreme Court justice, we would be doing ourselves and the judicial system a grave disservice by ignoring the fact that something very significant just happened. And it's concerning. But look, if we want judicial independence, this is a good time to focus on it. And I hope to do that in this hearing as in all others. Thank you.
It bears repeating that the Biden Justice Department is currently in the midst of a prosecution of the president's son, as well as a Democratic senator, if there's any question of political bias. We welcome the senators who are here to introduce their nominees. Senator Cardin, you're first.
Well, Chairman Durbin, Senator Lee, thank you very much for this opportunity for Senator Van Hollen and I to be able to introduce to you our U.S. Magistrate Judge Adam Abelson to fill the vacancy on our district court caused by the senior status being taken by Judge Bedard. We were pleased to make these recommendations to President Biden, and we were pleased that President Biden has submitted Judge Abelson's nomination for confirmation. Judge Abelson resides in Baltimore. He currently serves as a U.S. Magistrate Judge in the same circuit that would be where he would be confirmed to be a district court judge. I can tell you by personal experience he is well respected for his service as a U.S. Magistrate Judge, having the confidence of the people who have appeared before him. Senator Van Hollen and I set up a nonpartisan process to screen those that are interested to serve on the district court. We get many requests. Our nonpartisan committee screened the applicants, chose the top tier, and we interviewed those that reached the top tier. And both Senator Van Hollen and I believe that Judge Abelson is the best for this position, and we were pleased to recommend that nomination to the President of the United States. He is well qualified. He served as a U.S. Magistrate Judge since September 2023. He was prior to that in the private practice of law at Zuckerman and Spader. He served as a law clerk for the Fourth Circuit Judge Andre Davis and for the District Court Judge Catherine Blake. So he has a lot of experience. He got his JD degree from New York University, magna cum laude, and his BA from Princeton. He is a person who was a litigator in private practice, representing clients in complex civil litigation, white-collar criminal defense, and government investigations. He maintained an active pro bono practice, which to me is extremely important, shows his sensitivity to our responsibilities as lawyers, and is deeply involved in the community and legal profession. He serves as chair of the American Bar Association's Working Group on Building Public Trust in the American Justice System, for which he worked to develop the ABA's 10 guidelines on court fines and fees. He coordinated its development of the ABA principles on law enforcement body-worn camera policies. He has served on the board of the Jobs Opportunity Task Force since 2017, including serving as the vice chair and as a board member of an officer of the Maryland chapter of the Federal Bar Association. So you see he has extensive experience in the legal system. He's with the bar associations and with our community. We also recognize that serving in public office as a judge is a family sacrifice. So I particularly want to recognize his family that's with us today for sharing Judge Abelson with the public, his wife Laura, his 2 children, Max and Asher. They're the very well-behaved elementary school students that are in one of the rows back here. And I would just lastly just acknowledge that we got today the letter from the American Bar Association indicating in their opinion, unanimous opinion, that Magistrate Judge Abelson is well qualified to serve on the United States District Court for the District of Maryland. And I would urge the committee to report his nomination out favorably.
Thank you, Senator Cardin. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Senator Lee, members of the distinguished committee. I'm grateful for the opportunity to join my friend and colleague and senior senator from Maryland, Ben Cardin, in recommending the President's nominee for the U.S. District Court for the District of Maryland, U.S. Magistrate Judge Adam Abelson. And like Senator Cardin, I'd like to welcome his family members as well, his wife Laura and his children Asher and Max. And Senator Cardin, as always, has covered the highlights of Judge Abelson's, Magistrate Judge Abelson's legal career and other activities very well. So I just like to fill in around the edges, including some personal comments from his colleagues who know him best from working with him. I'd first like to highlight that earlier in his career, he was a research fellow for Human Rights Watch in Santiago, Chile, advocating for the victims of the Pinochet regime there and promoting freedom of the press in Argentina and Venezuela. And as a fellow at the Department of Justice, he helped prosecute the perpetrators of genocide in Bosnia and Rwanda. Senator Cardin has touched on many of his other positions and legal capacities. I would just point out that in Maryland and Baltimore, Judge Abelson, Magistrate Judge Abelson, has a reputation as being one of those people who wants to reach out and help others in the communities. His colleagues say he's especially gifted with, and I'm quoting, a special ability to explain complex legal matters in a way that is readily accessible to anyone, end quote. And that he has fought to ensure that, quote, neither lawyers nor judges lose sight of the humanity of every individual without regard to their resources, end quote. His colleagues say he regularly leaps at the chance to take on matters in furtherance of the public good. I'd like to highlight one particular case that he took on, which was a massive health insurance company case and won relief for over 100,000 patients who were being denied coverage for mental health and substance use disorders. Former Congressman Patrick Kennedy called it, quote, the Brown versus Board for the mental health movement. Senator Cardin has covered a number of his activities outside the confines of the courtroom and the legal profession. I would also highlight that he's an active member of his synagogue, Beth El congregation, and again, respected among all his peers in the community. Let me end, colleagues, with a mention of Judge Abelson's grandmother, Lois, who was a public school guidance counselor who counseled at-risk youth, taught adult education courses well into her 90s. In his application, Judge Abelson remembers that his grandmother helped put him on a path to public service. When she delivered meals for senior citizens in public housing, she took her grandchildren, including now Magistrate Judge Abelson, along. While Lois died 10 years ago, it's very clear that her tenacious work ethic and her devotion to justice live on in her grandson. Colleagues, I want to join my senior senator, Ben Cardin, in highly recommending Mr. Abelson as the U.S. District Court Judge for the District of Maryland to fill this vacancy. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. We realize both you and Senator Cardin have your own schedules to keep. We're honored that you take the time to introduce these outstanding nominees, so if you have to leave us, well understood. Thank you very much. Senator Casey?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity. I'm grateful that you make time for us to make introductions. I want to thank you and the ranking member for this opportunity to speak about someone I've known for a long time. I refer to him as Joe, but I know him as, he's known in my home community as Judge Joseph R. Saporito, Jr. He's a nominee to be a United States District Court Judge for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. As I said, I've known Judge Saporito for almost 50 years, since we were classmates in high school. I won't bore everybody with those stories, but since he graduated from high school, he then went on to Villanova University and Dickinson School of Law. He returned home to his home county in Luzerne County. I grew up and still live in Scranton, Lackawanna County, but he's one county away. After returning home to practice law, he eventually became a named partner and worked as a distinguished trial attorney for 3 decades. But even as Judge Saporito grew his private practice, he never failed to give back to his community. From 1985 to 2015, he served as part-time assistant public defender in Luzerne County, and from 1986 to 2009, he also worked as a part-time law clerk for the Court of Common Pleas in Luzerne County. Judge Saporito finally entered full-time public service in 2015 when he was appointed to serve by the District Court to serve as the U.S. Magistrate Judge for the Middle District of Pennsylvania, where he has served with distinction ever since. Both his stellar reputation and dedication to the rule of law are best reflected by the numerous individuals who have written to us to support his nomination from across the Middle District. Just by way of 3 examples, the Luzerne County District Attorney has written to us, who has tried many cases opposite of then Assistant Public Defender Saporito. The District Attorney wrote, quote, that Judge Saporito fought zealously for his clients, yet always with respect for the law, the process, and his legal adversaries and the court. As the District Attorney also wrote, Judge Saporito has always, quote, exemplified the knowledge, temperament, and decorum due to the federal bench. Another example, the Chief Judge of the Middle District, the Honorable John Jones III, offered his, quote, highest level of support, unquote, and wrote that Judge Saporito's, quote, character is beyond reproach, unquote. He also went on to say, during all the time I've served with Judge Saporito, I've not heard a single complaint regarding his work. In fact, there were legions of compliments, unquote. And third and finally, retired United States District Court Judge and eventually Chief Judge of the Appellate Court, Thomas Ivanaski, said this about Judge Saporito, quote, he's exceptionally intelligent, hardworking, thoughtful, patient, firm, fair, and compassionate, unquote. These are the qualities we all want in any federal judge in any federal district. And Judge Saporito has dedicated his career to Luzerne County, the people of Luzerne County, and the people of the entire Middle District. When I make a determination, as all senators I think would agree, when we make determinations about a candidate we're going to support to be a United States District Court Judge, we consider a variety of attributes, including, of course, a person's intellect, their experience, their integrity, their temperament, and their commitment to the law and commitment to justice under the law. Judge Saporito not only meets my expectations, in fact, he exceeds them. I'm honored that you would give me the opportunity to spend a few minutes talking about his qualifications, and I urge you to pass him out of committee with dispatch. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Casey, and thanks for sparing us all from high school adventures that you might have shared, good and bad. We appreciate your being here. We are going to proceed in a little unique fashion for a moment here. Senator Schumer is on the floor finishing a few duties and will join us to officially introduce nominee Judge Meredith Vaca. In the meantime, I'm going to introduce Judge Embry Kidd, who will be on the first panel as a Circuit Court nominee. He's nominated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. Judge Kidd was born in Birmingham, Alabama, received his BA with high honors from Emory University, went on to earn a JD from Yale Law School. After law school, Judge Kidd served as a law clerk to Judge Roger L. Gregory on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 4th Circuit. He then began working as an associate attorney at Williams & Connolly, where he litigated a variety of complex federal and state civil cases. In 2014, Judge Kidd joined the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida. There, he prosecuted cases involving public corruption, wire and mail fraud, financial crimes, violent crimes, crimes against children, and narcotics importation and distribution. He also worked closely with the office's appellate division. In 2019, he was selected by the judges of the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida to serve as U.S. Magistrate Judge. Since joining the bench, Judge Kidd has issued more than 13,000 written decisions. I congratulate Judge Kidd and his family on this nomination and look forward to hearing his testimony. And before I call him up for the first panel, I will read into the record the introduction for Judge Vaca, which may be repeated in part or in whole when Senator Schumer arrives. But I want to make sure it's on the record in its complete form. Judge Meredith Vaca, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Western District of New York, born in Busan, South Korea, where she received her BA from Colgate University, then went on to earn her JD from the University at Buffalo School of Law. After law school, Judge Vaca worked in private practice at Hamburger Weiss, an associate attorney, where she focused primarily on workers' compensation and insurance defense cases. In 2007, she joined the Monroe County District Attorney's Office. There she prosecuted thousands of cases, ranging from misdemeanors and domestic violence matters to child abuse and homicide. In her 13-year tenure, she tried 60 cases to verdict and routinely appeared in suppression hearings and grand jury presentations. In 2020, Judge Vaca was elected to serve as a judge in Monroe County Court. Since joining the bench, she has presided over 21 felony trials that have gone to verdict. Judge Vaca has the support of Leader Schumer and Senator Gillibrand. I congratulate her on her nomination and look forward to hearing her testimony today. Now I ask for a brief pause/recess while we determine the status of Senator Schumer's arrival. Rest at ease. The Judiciary Committee will resume, and just in the nick of time, the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, Senator Schumer, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you, Ranking Member Graham.
Is your microphone on, Chuck?
Sorry. And my colleagues on the Judiciary Committee, as I always like to note, I'm a former member of the committee, so I recognize the good and important work you do day in and day out. Now, today it's my honor to introduce a truly exceptional nominee and a true blue New Yorker, Meredith Vaca, who I proudly recommended to President Biden to serve as district judge for the District of Western New York. But first, let me acknowledge everyone from Judge Vaca's family here with her this morning. With her is her husband, Dan, their daughter, her parents, Paul and Carolyn Vaca, her sister, Leah, and her 2 nieces. What a proud day for the entire family. If confirmed, excuse me, Judge Vaca, a proud Korean American, would make history as the first Asian American and the first woman of color ever to serve as a judge in the Western District of New York, which has Buffalo and Rochester metropolitan area, as well as many other nice places. I can confidently say that Western New York and New York State as a whole would not be what it is today without the immeasurable contributions of our Asian American community. It's a strong, creative, hardworking, vibrant, proud, and patriotic community whose growing presence has enriched our state immensely. As the senior senator from New York and as the majority leader, I've always worked to make New York's federal bench better reflect the communities it serves. Judge Vaca's nomination marks another major step towards that goal. If confirmed, Judge Vaca would also make the formerly all-male Western District bench 50% female, making it one of the country's few 50% female benches. This is something that I've also championed and achieved in the Northern District of New York, which has the Albany and Syracuse areas. One day, I hope this is the norm across the country, but I'm proud that we're achieving this milestone in upstate New York. Judge Vaca has every quality you could possibly want in a jurist: tremendous expertise, sharp legal acumen, deep institutional knowledge, and a genuine love for her community. She's a longtime resident of the Western District, raised by her loving parents, Paul and Carolyn, in the Rochester area in the town of Greece, New York, and educated at the great University at Buffalo School of Law. She was certainly inspired to pursue a career in the law by her father, a well-selected attorney. After a short stint in private practice, Judge Vaca chose the path of public service and has spent the last 17 years of her career fighting for vulnerable New Yorkers. As assistant district attorney in Monroe County, she stood up for victims of domestic violence and of child abuse. As Monroe County Court judge, she presided over several criminal felony-level offenses and was known for managing her courtroom respectfully and fairly. And since January of last year, she has served as an acting justice of the New York State Supreme Court, where she has developed a unique and thorough knowledge of our state and country's laws. I can think of nobody more qualified to serve on the district court for the Western District of New York than Rochester's own Meredith Vaca. I'm extremely proud to support her nomination. And one final note, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend this committee for your work processing judges over the past few years. As everyone knows, we just hit a significant milestone: 200 judges confirmed to lifetime appointments on the bench under President Biden. These judges are restoring balance and excellence to our courts. They're expanding the diversity and dynamism of our judiciary, and they are upholding the law fairly, equally, impartially. And I'm proud that these judges have made our courts look more like America. Nearly 2/3 of our federal judges that we've nominated and put on the bench are women and people of color. Thanks to the work of this committee, our federal judiciary is far stronger and more dynamic than it was just a few years ago. I look forward to working with the committee, you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Graham, in the coming weeks and months ahead. So thanks to Judge Vaca and her family for being here, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Graham, and members of the committee for the chance to speak.
Thanks, Senator Schumer. Appreciate the kind words.
Thank you.
Before we proceed, there's a little housekeeping chore to change the nameplates and such. We have 2 panels today. The first panel is the Circuit Court nominee, and the second panel will be the District Court nominees. Judge Kidd, if you please approach the table. Remain standing for a moment. Raise your right hand. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the nominee has answered in the affirmative. You now have an opportunity to make an opening statement. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Durbin, for your kind introduction, and to all of the other senators on this committee for your time today. Thank you to President Biden for nominating me for a judgeship on the 11th Circuit, which covers the state where I grew up, Alabama, the state where I spent my formative college years, Georgia, and the state where I now reside, Florida. And it is truly an honor to be considered for a seat that is currently held by Judge Charles Wilson and was previously held by Judge Joseph Hatchett. I am happy to be joined today by several of my family members, my wife, Noni Holmes-Kidd, who has been both my biggest advocate and source of inspiration for the past 20 years. I certainly would not be here without her encouragement and support. We brought our 5-year-old son. I promised him that he would also have an opportunity to ask me questions today, but we'll do that later, maybe over ice cream. My father, Robert, joins us from Vincent, Alabama, which is a small town where my family has lived for generations. My father and my late mother, Mary Ellen Kidd, first instilled in me the importance of public and community service. My father served on the town council for 20 years, and my cousin Bridget Smith, who is with us today, succeeded him in that role and continues to be a shining example of servant leadership in the community. Those values of civic and community service are shared by my wife's family, and I'm happy to be joined by my father-in-law, the Reverend Dr. R.B. Holmes, Jr., who is a long-standing religious and community leader in the state of Florida and nationally. His guidance and support have been invaluable to me over the years. My mother-in-law, Yvonne Baker, is a former educator and church leader, and I'm happy to have her here as well. In addition to my family, I'm joined by mentors and friends from various stages in my life, each of whom has contributed in some important way to my being here today, and I know that I have even more friends and family watching from around the country. I thank all of them for their continued support. And finally, I would like to thank my court family in the Middle District of Florida for their support, and particularly my career clerk, Robin Nauman, who joins us today, my current and former term clerks, Janelle, Alana, Shantae, Anusha, and Alexia, and my courtroom deputy, Julie. I thank them for their hard work and dedication to our shared mission. Senators, I welcome your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Kidd. For those who are here with the nominees and have not been through this process before, it is an interesting exercise. Men and women come before us hoping for lifetime appointments to the federal bench. They are questioned about their backgrounds, their competence, their integrity, and their record under the law. Judge Kidd, you bring one of the most lengthy records I can recall. 13,700 decisions. Amazing. Reversed 9 times. 9 times out of 13,700. That's quite a record. The American Bar Association asked lawyers and professionals in your community what they thought of your performance as a judge, and let me read what they said. The Standing Committee of the American Bar Association has the unanimous opinion that Magistrate Judge Kidd is well qualified to serve on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. That's a good starting point. Having said that, expect that at least 2 or 3 of the decisions which you reach will be very controversial and raised in this committee. That is part of the process. I know you're prepared for that. So let's start in with the question, if I can, in terms of 2 cases. U.S. versus Dady. Do you recall that case?
Yes, Senator.
Explain to me what your ruling was in that case.
In United States versus Dady, I saw the defendant at an initial appearance, and at that case, at that time, it was on a criminal complaint, and my involvement in the case was really that initial appearance and a detention hearing, at which time, at the initial complaint stage, he had been charged with 1 count of possession of child pornography. After hearing that evidence from the government, I placed the defendant on home detention, house arrest. So he couldn't leave his residence without court's permission. He was on GPS monitoring, no contact with the victims or with any other minors. And subsequent to that, the defendant was indicted with 2 additional charges of enticement of a minor for 2 different victims. The government sought a review of that decision with the district court and presented additional evidence to the district court that was not before me, and the district court decided to detain the defendant, and then I think he was ultimately convicted of those crimes.
So your home confinement for pretrial was under charges that changed dramatically after. Is that correct?
That's correct, Senator. In addition, at the time that I saw the defendant, there was no statutory presumption that he should be detained based on the charges that he was ultimately indicted for. At the time that the district judge saw the defendant, there was a statutory presumption that he should be detained.
U.S. versus King. Could you explain your decision in that case?
In United States versus King, the defendant, I believe, had been charged with possession of child pornography. At the detention hearing, after hearing evidence from the government and hearing argument from both sides, this was another individual that I placed on house arrest with similar conditions, could not leave the residence without court permission. He was on GPS monitoring. He could have no contact with the victims or with any other minors. And in that case, the government, again, presented additional evidence to the district judge. And the district judge noted on the record that that additional evidence persuaded her that the defendant should be detained. And he was ultimately, I believe he was ultimately convicted of those charges.
So the charges against this defendant, after you initially put the home confinement requirement, changed and were increased in the district court, made a decision based on those new charges. Is that correct?
Senator, I believe in that case there was an indictment. I'm not sure if there was a superseding indictment afterward, but the government presented additional information to the district judge based on my review of the transcript regarding the defendant's compulsions, and that caused the district judge great concern. That information was not presented to me.
I'd like to ask you, in the minute remaining, if you can, to summarize your involvement in the Joel Greenberg case.
In the Joel Greenberg case, I was not the magistrate judge assigned to the ultimate case, but I was the magistrate judge who saw Mr. Greenberg at his initial appearance, and I set his conditions of release. At some point, Mr. Greenberg violated the conditions of his release, and I ordered him detained based on that violation.
Thank you. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Judge Kidd, do you believe that rape laws are laden with racial baggage?
Senator, I have never made that statement, and as a former prosecutor, I prosecuted individuals who had committed crimes against children and other sexually violent crimes.
Okay. The reason I raised the question is that you're cited in the acknowledgments, very early in the acknowledgments, in a law review article written by Monica Bell, in which she thanks you for conversations that shaped the article. In this article, she makes a number of claims, including the suggestion repeatedly that rape laws, child rape laws, including rape laws generally as well, are laden with racial baggage. She also makes the case that the image of the child molester or the rapist is often disproportionately or unfairly leveled, this sort of racial dog whistle, and makes a lot of these cases after thanking you for conversations that shaped it. Are you saying you disagree with her characterization of the law in that respect?
Senator, I think I recall the article that you're talking about, and I believe that Monica Bell, who's my law school classmate, wrote that article while we were in law school, and I certainly have not made any statements, and I don't recall making any statements to now Professor Bell regarding any rape laws. So I do not adopt anything that she has stated. I'm certain we had conversations generally in law school. I don't recall what they were about, but I certainly do not recall any conversations about rape laws.
Do you share those views that she expressed?
Senator, as best as I can recall your summary, I do not share the views. I would certainly follow whatever laws are in place with regard to rape and whatever issue happens to be at issue.
All right, in the same article, she also stated, quote, when a law threatens to impinge on constitutional rights, and especially where those at risk are those whom society would most like to cast out or even exterminate, courts must understand and evaluate the social forces that motivated these laws. Today, child molestation sparks the same urge for community isolation and the spirit of vigilantism that rape did in the Coker era. An analysis of the multi-layered political context of capital child rape laws suggests that the social forces surrounding the new legislation are inescapably too intense, too frenzied, too emotional, and too mired in racial and class-based prejudice to avoid arbitrariness and caprice. Now, I'm not quite sure what she means by laws that implicate constitutional rights. In a sense, all criminal laws do that, and that they will restrain your liberty if you violate them and you're found guilty. She's arguing, in essence, that evaluating criminal statutes that implicate constitutional rights in one way or another, that in doing that, courts have to understand and evaluate these social forces that animate whatever it is that prompted the enactment of the legislation to begin with. Do you agree with that statement? And what bearing should that have? When and under what circumstances is it appropriate for a federal judge to consider what forces animated the enactment of a statute, for example, prohibiting rape?
Senator, I do not agree with that statement. As a sitting judge, and if I'm confirmed to the 11th Circuit, I would follow the law, and I would follow Supreme Court precedent, the 11th Circuit precedent. It's not my job as a judge to assess societal forces. That's left to the policymakers, not to me.
Are there any circumstances under which the social forces that motivated the enactment of a statute under consideration by the court should be taken into account? If so, what would those circumstances be?
Senator, I know that there are certain circumstances, for instance, with religious liberty, where if there is a law in terms of assessing whether it's actually generally applicable and neutral, the courts can look to certain circumstances surrounding its enactment. But as a general matter, no senator would not look outside of the plain text of the law.
So outside the narrow context of the city of Hialeah versus Church of the Lukumi Babaluai, you would say you typically would not do that as a federal judge?
That's correct.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to the nominee and to your family. I asked the following two questions initially to ascertain the fitness to serve of all of the nominees who come before any of the committees on which I sit. So, Judge Kidd, I ask you, since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement relating to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
Judge Kidd, the article that my colleague just questioned quoted to you, is from 2007. Does that article have anything to do with your role as a judge or how you would rule as a judge if confirmed?
No, Senator, and I barely remembered that I was mentioned in that article. As I said, we were in law school at the time, and I do know that my classmate published the article. But in terms of any statements therein, they would certainly not affect my consideration as a judge.
Could you repeat how you would decide cases before you?
Senator, I, as a sitting judge, and if I'm nominated to the 11th Circuit, I would approach each case with an open mind. I would consider the issues that are presented from each side fairly. I would thoroughly research those issues, and I would issue a decision that I hope could be understood by the parties involved and the general public, and I would treat the parties with respect.
That is my expectation of judges, that they be fair and objective, apply the law to the facts, and follow relevant precedent. Judge Kidd, as a federal prosecutor and then as a judge, you could not engage in pro bono representation, but you continue to give back to your community by speaking at local schools and volunteering with Bar Association programs. At these engagements, do you focus on a particular message or messages?
No, Senator, at those engagements, I'm mostly explaining the role of the judiciary, explaining the role of a judge. At some of them, there are law students who might be interested in appearing in federal court. I explain federal court to them. Some people are interested in becoming a judge, and I try to shed some light on that process as well. It's really my, I believe that it's my obligation, in a sense, to go out into the community and to provide that sort of education and to be that sort of role model for people who are interested in becoming a judge or a prosecutor or a lawyer.
I note that you have connections to all three states in the 11th Circuit. You were born in Alabama, went to college in Georgia, and now live and work in Florida. How has your background prepared you to serve the people who live in the 11th Circuit as an appellate judge?
That's correct, Senator. I have ties to all three states, and I'm proud of that. The 11th Circuit is my home circuit, and I believe that each stage of my career has helped me in the preparation for this position. In each job that I've had, I've been a generalist, so if I'm confirmed to the 11th Circuit, I will continue to be a generalist and delving into those issues that are filed in federal court. As a current magistrate judge, I'm assigned to every type of case that gets filed in federal court, and we're one of the largest districts in the country, so we see a lot. So I'm involved in helping the parties as they develop the factual record. We're often referred motions for summary judgment, so I apply the law to the facts as they set forth. We have a large Social Security docket in which we hear appeals from the Social Security Administration, which is the same standard that the 11th Circuit considers. So I think that my career to this point has prepared me for this position.
As a federal prosecutor, you earned the FBI Director's Award for your investigation of a drug trafficking ring in Central Florida. Can you briefly tell the committee about that case and your work on it in the time remaining?
Yes, Senator. I worked with the Federal Bureau of Investigation to investigate a local organization that was committing a number of crimes in Seminole County, which is in Central Florida. And through working with the FBI, we were able to obtain court-ordered wiretaps to infiltrate the organization, and ultimately several individuals were charged in a conspiracy and were ultimately convicted, making what we view as a very positive impact on that community.
And for this, you received recognition for your work, so.
That's correct.
Good job. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Judge. I just want to talk a little bit about the law. Tell me about the war powers clauses in Articles 1 and 2.
Well, Senator, my understanding of the war powers is that the executive maintains significant authority with regard to the war, but that it has to be authorized by Congress.
What do you mean authorized?
Senator, I don't have a more, that issue has not come before me, but I don't have a more specific definition of authorization than that the Congress has to, it's up to the Congress to, to authorize it. I can't say more than that, Senator.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about another issue you'll see if you're confirmed with the 11th Circuit. It's an issue we struggle with every day, and as do the federal courts. Tell me about the non-delegation doctrine.
My understanding, Senator, of the non-delegation doctrine is that Congress should not delegate its powers to other branches of government except in certain limited circumstances.
And what are those limited circumstances?
I believe, based on my understanding, that Congress can, for instance, delegate some of its authority to the executive, such as executive agencies, if that authority is carefully circumscribed.
I'm not following you. The Constitution's pretty clear in Article 1 that the legislative power resides in the United States Congress, and we can't give it away. But your argument is that we can.
Senator, it's my understanding that in certain limited circumstances that are carefully circumscribed, that Congress can delegate some of its authority to.
Okay. What's the guiding principle, though? If we tomorrow, if Congress passed a law and said we're no longer going to confirm judges, we're going to set up a special agency within the executive branch and give that agency the authority to confirm judges. Somebody's going to litigate it. What would be the principle that the court would follow?
Senator, I would certainly, if that issue were to come before me on the 11th Circuit, if I'm fortunate to be confirmed, I would research the Supreme Court's precedent and guidance on that issue and any binding 11th Circuit precedent on the issue, if there is any, and address that issue. But in terms of the hypothetical situation, Senator, I would leave it at that.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this. Let's set aside what the principle is for a moment. The Supreme Court has been pretty clear what the principle is. It goes back, 80 years. But let's suppose, well, strike that. What I'm trying to understand is how you think, Judge. What do you think the principle ought to be? I mean, our founders were very clear that the legislative power is ours, and clearly we've given away that legislative power in some instances to some administrative agencies. What do you think the principle ought to be? Could the Congress just come in one week and said, we're tired, let's just give it all to the president for about 6 months while we go fishing? Would that be constitutional?
Well, certainly, Senator, I think to that extent would unlikely be constitutional based on...
Why do you think?
Based on the principle that I just stated, that and that you have reiterated, that...
Which is?
That Congress cannot delegate its authority except in certain circumstances.
And those are?
And those are ones that, Senator, I would not want to speculate about. I can say that I would follow the Supreme Court's guidance on that, and my understanding of that guidance is that those circumstances are very narrow.
Okay. But you're not familiar with the principle?
Senator, to the extent that you're looking for a specific articulation,
yes.
I would have to look at the case law and follow up
Okay.
on that.
Robert, do you have any questions you want me to ask your dad? You sure? Now's your shot, man. Do you have anything you'd like to say to us, Robert? It's okay. A wise man
I
once
think he
said
had a hello.
nothing.
I think he had a hello for
A
you.
wise man once said nothing. Thank you, Judge.
Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Congratulations, Judge, on your nomination. Thank you to your family for their support and sacrifice, and to your young son, who looks about as interested in this hearing as others. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for your service to this point. I am interested in probing a bit and understanding how you would think about the staffing of your court, and how some of the experiences that you submitted in your materials might inform that. To that point, as a historically black college graduate myself, I note that you have spent some time at Florida A&M as an adjunct professor. Can you share with us the learnings, lessons offered to you by those sort of aspiring legal scholars, and how it would help you to think about the roles necessary and diversity necessary to be a part of your court?
Yes, Senator, thank you. I do have the privilege of serving as an adjunct professor at Florida A&M University College of Law, which, as you recognize, is a historically black college or university. It actually is directly across the street from the U.S. courthouse. So that was really part of my effort to help get those students who come, many of whom come from very non-traditional backgrounds, some economically disadvantaged backgrounds, into federal court. Because one thing that I noticed as a prosecutor in the court and then as a judge is that we didn't see the students very often. So I started the federal practice course. We would meet every week in my courtroom, and I would introduce them to federal judges and practitioners, and we'd have those conversations, which I think is important in terms of exposing those students and others to federal practice, which in some ways can be intimidating, and we often see people from a certain background. We don't see people very often who come from places like Florida A&M University, so I wanted to provide that exposure to the students, and it's really been a great learning experience, and it's impacted the way that I staff my chambers. For instance, I have conversations with students and potential clerks about clerking and why they haven't thought about clerking or applying to a clerkship, and one thing that I learned is that for many of them, should come as no surprise, they have a very heavy loan burden, and taking a year off instead of going to private practice, becoming a clerk, can present a financial challenge, but especially, which is common at the time I started, a 2-year clerkship. So that would be 2 years of that challenge. So now my standard is to do a 1-year clerkship that can be extended, but I think in that way I broaden the pool of applicants that I get for my clerkships.
I appreciate that. Just one last question, Mr. Chair, and I will yield my time. I meet you at a place of being from a small town. Birmingham is not small compared to Magnolia, Mississippi. But the states that are a part of the 11th District, 11th Circuit actually do encompass a variety of residents and geographical diversity, ensuring fair and adequate access to the law feels essential for a circuit that is so geographically diverse. Can you talk about how, from the experience that you have had as a magistrate judge, how it is that you approach ensuring fair, adequate, and competent justice, and so that litigants actually understand the positions that you are offering and conclusions that you're coming to?
Yes, Senator. And to clarify, I was born in Birmingham, but I was raised in Vincent, which has about 3,000 people. So we'll have to talk about who comes from the smaller town. But as a current judge, I take that issue very seriously because we have a lot of pro se individuals, and their cases are very important to them as for any litigant, but they are often not well versed in the law. So I particularly take an interest in those, and I'll often bring them into the courtroom to try to explain the process for moving their case forward. And I've had some cases where the litigants were ultimately successful, and sometimes they just need a little help understanding how the process works. If I were to be confirmed to the 11th Circuit, I would continue to do that. I had the great fortune of clerking for Judge Gregory on the 4th Circuit, and he took a particular interest also in those sorts of pro se cases, the prisoner litigation, just giving them a closer look, making sure that their valid claims are actually heard by the court, and that's something that I would continue to do.
Thanks, Senator Butler. The senior senator from California, Senator Padilla.
Thank you. Well, I had a birthday a couple months ago. I'm just thinking, is that a jab? Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations, Judge Kidd. You're going to be able to tell pretty easily that we are the two senators representing California because we both enjoy emphasizing the value of diversity in this committee and in our questions of nominees that come before us. So appreciate listening to the conversation I walked in on about the diverse perspectives that are important to have on the bench. Firm believer and cheerleader for diversity on the bench, not just because I think it improves the work product of the federal judiciary when there are people with a wide variety of both life and professional experiences that feed into the deliberations and the decisions. But in addition to that, I think as we're working to restore public confidence in the federal judiciary, we'll leave the Supreme Court alone here for a minute, but at all levels. And so coming into this process with that mindfulness, not just of what you and your potential service would represent, but I heard your mention about expanding the opportunities and access for clerkships, because you know how important clerkships can be for young attorneys as they're beginning their careers, whether it's in public service or in the private sector and beyond. So I heard a couple of the ideas that you mentioned. I don't know if there's any others of what you would do if you're fortunate enough to be confirmed to continue to broaden that reach and diversity for clerks in your courtroom.
Yes, Senator. So in addition to what I spoke about earlier, I do believe that there are things that we can do to improve the pipeline. Pipeline, I think, is part of the problem, the issue that can be addressed. So I have participated in several pipeline programs that are developed to address the pipeline. Such the Administrative Office of the Federal Courts had one a year or two ago about magistrate judges, and it was really to inform lawyers, law students about the process of becoming a magistrate judge, to kind of pull the curtain back a little bit on that process and to encourage people who might not otherwise think of themselves as someone who could be a magistrate judge to give that a second thought and provide resources for them and an opportunity to speak to current magistrate judges. So in that way, addressing school groups the same way, law schools especially, I think is another way to address that problem of just putting in law students' minds the idea that that is something that they want to do, so that then we then have a better pool of applicants to draw from.
Look, I'm a big believer in those pipeline programs, as you call them, or outreach programs, as I understood them. I am not an attorney. I'm an engineer, and if it wasn't for those outreach programs when I was in high school, I don't think I would have thought of it or certainly achieved it. So there's a lot of value there. In the time remaining, I'm going to sort of flip the script a little bit on you. because we've already talked about diversity and ideas on how to do better outreach here, so for those aspiring lawyers watching at home, for that young person, maybe a law student, maybe an undergrad, maybe a high school student, or even younger, with a little bit of an idea or a dream of maybe someday becoming a federal judge, share with us and share with them what inspired you to pursue this career path.
Thank you for that, Senator. I am not someone who grew up in a family of lawyers. I grew up in a working class family. It was a great family, but no lawyers in my family. So it's not something that I thought about when I was going through high school, or really even until about junior year of college, when I took a course on constitutional law, which I thought was really fascinating, and I developed a relationship with that professor. And then at that point, I decided to go to law school. So it was really that point that I decided that law was something that I was interested in. And in terms of being a judge, I would say my clerkship with Judge Gregory on the Fourth Circuit was instrumental in that. Again, I did not have judges in my family growing up, so seeing him and how he approached the law and the importance to him of being in the community and community service as a judge, and working with him behind the scenes in each case, that's what really inspired me to someday think that I myself might want to be a judge one day. So I would encourage anyone who has an inkling of going to law school to talk to people, develop those types of relationships with their professors, if they know any judges, and to, if they do decide to go to law school, give clerking a thought.
Oh, well, two great lessons today: the value of pipeline programs and the value of mentorship.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator Padilla. Senator Blackburn, we'll give you a moment to compose yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. Judge Kidd, I want to ask you about U.S. versus Rodriguez-Sanchez. You remember that case?
Senator, the name does not ring a bell, but perhaps
Okay.
the facts might.
All right, this was an illegal immigrant from Mexico, and you ordered him released from federal custody pending trial. And he had quite a criminal history. He had a series of charges, including resisting an officer with violence, 2 charges of domestic violence. He was deported by ICE in 2011, and then at some point, he illegally re-entered the country. Now, in deciding to release this illegal alien, you essentially determined that under the Bail Reform Act, he did not pose a danger to the community. Do you think that crimes of domestic violence are serious enough to impose a danger to the community?
To answer that question, Senator, yes, and I don't recall that specific case, but if this were an illegal reentry case, I would note that it's pretty rare that release is granted in those cases, so I imagine I also would have placed him on house arrest or
Well,
with GPS
he was
monitoring.
on an ICE detainer when you decided to release him. And another consideration for deciding whether to release a criminal defendant pending trial is if they pose a flight risk. And how could you possibly argue that an illegal alien with a criminal record was, and they were going to be deported by ICE, that they were not a flight risk?
Senator, in those cases, the question is whether there are any conditions that I could impose that would mitigate any risk of flight. And again, I don't recall that specific one, but generally, if it's...
Would you like to review that and then submit an answer to me in your questions? Because to me, when we're looking at crime, that is committed by illegal entrants into this country. This is something that is of tremendous concern to me. Another one that is of concern to me is the article, and Senator Lee mentioned the article to you that deals with child rape laws. And I've done a lot of work working on children that are being trafficked. And the chairman's done a lot of work dealing with child sexual abuse and exploitative material. But the fact that you were listed as having had conversations that shaped an article about capital child rape laws is of concern to me. One of your statements, and I'm going to quote you on this, is that capital child rape statutes are formed at the nexus of three movements: the popular movement to shame, fear, and isolate sex offenders, the feminist movement for harsher punishment of sexual and intrafamilial violence, and the legal and political movement to punish attacks against vulnerable victims with death. So there's a lot in that. So do you think there is currently a popular movement to shame, fear, and isolate sex offenders?
Senator, that was not my statement.
That was not your statement. It's an article you contributed to, and that is the author stating, and I'm quoting that. That was it. So do you agree with that? Do you think that there is a popular movement to shame, to fear, to isolate sex offenders? Do you think sex offenders are criminals? Or do you see them as victims? Do you think that there is a feminist movement that is pushing for harsher penalties and punishments of sexual and intrafamilial violence?
Senator, as a former prosecutor, I prosecuted many cases involving sex offenses, and I believe that those offenses and those people who commit them should be punished.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's wrong for the article to advocate for harsher punishments for sexual and intrafamilial incest violence?
Do I think that it's wrong to advocate for harsher punishment? Senator, as to the particular policy considerations, I would leave to this body. But again, as a former prosecutor, I did seek significant punishments for those who engaged in those offenses.
Okay, why don't you pull your records and let us know how many conversations you had with the author that shaped the contents of the article. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Would you like to clarify that, Judge Kidd? Because I understand your name was mentioned in a footnote to an article which you didn't author, and that's why this line of questioning has arisen.
My understanding, Senator, is that I was listed in the acknowledgement somewhere in the article that was written by my law school classmate. I did not write anything in the article, and I don't adopt any statements in the article. Quite frankly, it's been so long I don't remember what the article is about, aside from what the senators have summarized today.
Well, perhaps for Senator Blackburn and others, you can put that in writing, clarifying your involvement in that. Is that all right, Senator? Judge Kidd, thank you for joining us. There may be written questions submitted by other members of the committee, which we hope you'll respond to in a timely fashion. We wish you the best, and Robert did a great job as well.
Thank you. He gets the ice cream.
Yes. Now we'll prepare for the second panel. The nominees would stay standing for just a moment. We'll administer the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that all three nominees have answered in the affirmative. Thank goodness. Each has 5 minutes, an opening statement. Judge Abelson, you're first.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Durbin and in absentia, Ranking Member Graham and members of the Judiciary Committee. Thank you for convening this hearing and for considering my nomination as a U.S. District Judge for the District of Maryland. I'd like to start by thanking President Biden for nominating me. Senator Cardin and Senator Van Hollen, thank you for the confidence you have placed in me in recommending me to President Biden for this nomination and your extremely kind words of introduction. I'm deeply honored by this nomination. I was also deeply honored to have been selected by the district judges of our district to serve as a magistrate judge, and I'd like to thank my judicial colleagues in Baltimore and Greenbelt for your support and mentorship over the years. Thank you to the amazing staff of our court, especially my law clerks, Joel Lang and Julian Barnes. Mr. Barnes is here today, as well as all of the components that make our courthouse work to ensure access to justice for the people who come through our doors, from the marshals to pretrial services to everyone in the clerk's office. I have been inspired and guided by many mentors and colleagues over the years. I am forever grateful to have begun my legal career as a law clerk to Judge Catherine Blake, U.S. District Judge for the District of Maryland, and Judge Andre Davis, who served on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit. Judge Blake and Judge Davis are models for me every day. They epitomize approaching every case with impartiality and an open mind, diving into the facts and the law, and making sure that every litigant before them not only was in fact heard and understood, but felt heard and understood. I'm deeply grateful to my colleagues, my former colleagues at Zuckerman Spader, where I practiced before joining the bench, where we always held each other to the highest standards of excellence, the highest standards of integrity, representing clients across our diverse practice. And finally, my family. I'm joined here today by my amazing wife, Laura Abelson, and our 2 boys. Laura has been my best friend for over 20 years. She is an inspiration to me, and I am so lucky to be going through life with her. To our children, nothing makes me more proud than seeing the smart, kind, creative kids that you have become. I'm also joined in this hearing room by my parents, Drs. Abby and Tom Abelson, who have inspired me and my brothers from our earliest years, as well as my wonderful parents-in-law, Jean Ginsburg and Dr. Ed Ginsburg. We're also joined online by my brothers and siblings-in-law, Aaron Abelson and Fiona McGuire, who are joining online from Texas, Dr. Ben Abelson and Jennifer Abelson joining from Arizona, and Dr. Stephen and Amy Ginsburg in Colorado. And finally, many thanks to my other mentors, colleagues, friends, and family watching around the country. Senators, I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Judge Abelson. Judge Saporeto, now's your chance to clear the record, the high school record of Bob Casey.
Bob Casey is the same affable and amiable person that you see walking around the halls of the Senate as he was in 1974 when he was walking around the halls of Scranton Prep.
So you're going to stand by him?
Absolutely.
All right. Please proceed.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Durbin, members of this esteemed committee. I am grateful to the President for the extraordinary honor of this nomination to the United States District Court for the Middle District of Pennsylvania. I also thank my home state senators, and especially Senator Bob Casey for his kind and generous introduction. I'm accompanied today by my family and coworkers. I'm grateful to my wife, Giovanna, for her love and support for over our 38 years of marriage. Our son, Joseph, is with us today. He is a practicing lawyer in our hometown and in my former firm in the law office, which was started by my late father in 1946. Our daughter, Sarah, couldn't be with us today because she is fulfilling her duties as a physician assistant, tending to her pulmonology patients back home, and she and her husband Graham have blessed us with the absolute joys of our lives, our 4-year-old granddaughter Nina and our 2-year-old grandson James. I'm also grateful to my brother Carlo and my sister-in-law Jill for their love and support in all of my pursuits throughout my life. They could not be with us today as they are attending their granddaughter's high school graduation. Also joining me today are my co-workers, my courtroom deputy, Mary Shira, and my judicial assistant, Nicole Rinaldi. Nicole has been with me for 33 years, and I thank them for their tremendous work ethic and for making our chambers a very pleasant place to work. I also want to recognize my law clerk, Jeff Berger, for his many years of service, and he is manning our chambers today. So all 3 of my chamber staff have been with me since I started as a magistrate judge in 2015. I have been blessed with wonderful in-laws. 2 of my wife's siblings are with us today, my brother-in-law and former law partner, Sam Falcone, and my sister-in-law, Tina Rava. I had the best mother-in-law and father-in-law any son-in-law could ask for. 2 of my cousins have joined me as well. My cousin Morena Gibbons, who has always been like a sister to me, and her husband and my cousin, Dr. Jerry Gibbons, who has always supported me in all of my endeavors. I am grateful for the support from the entire court family of the Middle District of Pennsylvania, especially my district judge and magistrate judge colleagues who have become wonderful friends over the last 9+ years. And to my friends and family watching from home, I thank them for their love and support as well. Finally, I want to acknowledge my late parents, who were wonderful to me and my brother and our families, and especially my father, who I followed into this legal profession. He was a member of the greatest generation, a 4-year member of the United States Navy, and he served in Okinawa. He had the most influence on me as a member of the legal profession and the way I conduct my life. He would be enormously proud today. Thank you, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Vaca. Is it Vaca or Vaca?
Vaca.
Vaca.
Yes,
Please
thank
proceed.
you. Thank you, Chair Durbin, and to all the members of the committee. I want to thank all of you for your consideration today, and of course, more importantly, your dedication to our country and to our judiciary. I am truly honored and grateful for this incredible opportunity. I want to thank President Biden for the nomination. I also want to thank Senator Schumer for the very kind introduction, his recommendation, and his confidence in me to fill this very important role in the Western District of New York. I'd also like to thank Senator Gillibrand for her support of my nomination. My twin sister and I, and she's here today, we were born in South Korea. We came over to the United States as babies, and we were adopted into a wonderful and loving family. We became U.S. citizens at 2 years old. I grew up in Rochester, New York, where I live today. It's difficult to express the gratitude that I feel for where life has taken me. From coming to the United States and making this my home, from being adopted by 2 amazing parents, to creating a wonderful family of my own, to this moment now with all of you and all the other big and small moments in between. I'd like to introduce you to some of my family members present today. My parents, Paul and Carolyn, are here. My father has been a criminal defense attorney for many years, and my mother is a U.S. history professor. I am forever grateful to them for their unconditional love and support. They have helped guide me over the years in creating the best version of myself. My twin sister, Leah, is also here. She is a biochemistry professor, a wife and the mother of my 2 amazing nieces who are also here today, almost 11 and 14. Their father, my brother-in-law Scott, could not be here today. He's finishing up teaching the school year. My husband and our daughter are also here today with me. My husband, Dan, is an engineer and the greatest husband and father that I could wish for. He is my biggest supporter, and I am the same for him. I am so grateful for the life we have created and continue to create. And I know that I speak for both of us when I say that our most cherished gift is our daughter, who has given our lives purpose, meaning, and incredible joy. She is 6 years old, and she's right back there. She is the shining light of our lives. I'd also like to thank all of my family members that are not here today. You are my lifeblood, and my gratitude to all of you is immense. I want to thank my colleagues back at home in Rochester, at the Hall of Justice. I am honored to work amongst such thoughtful and dedicated judges. I also want to thank all of the court staff that work tirelessly every day to help make our court better and serve others. A very special thank you to my assistant, Alicia, and my law clerk, Anna. I would not be the judge I am today without you, and I am so thankful for our small, wonderful team, for your dedication and your friendship. Again, thank you to all the committee members for your consideration today and your commitment to this important task. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Judge Vaca. Judge Abelson, let me start my 5 minutes of questioning with noting the fact that you were chair of the ABA Working Group on Building Public Trust in American Justice. Is that correct?
I was. I no longer am, but I was the chair of that group.
It seems to me in my legal lifetime, political lifetime, whatever it is, the two most significant changes in law enforcement that I can think of were DNA evidence and videotaping of the scene. It has changed the national conversation, first on culpability with the DNA evidence, as well as with the video evidence. You did some research in this area as part of that working group. Could you like to comment on that?
Sure. Thank you, Senator. In my capacity as a member of that working group, we did do a project a number of years ago relating to police body cameras, not specifically addressing the question of whether departments should adopt them, but more thinking through and collecting thoughts in the law enforcement and justice community about considerations regarding policies that departments, if they were to be using police body cameras, body-worn cameras, to think about in adopting those policies.
Now that we have several years of experience, on-the-job experience with this, and some controversial evidence produced by it, do you think we need to reassess that, the involvement of that videotape in law enforcement?
So, Senator, as a sitting magistrate judge now, and of course, if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed as a district judge, body-worn camera evidence comes into evidence in many cases. Questions of policy would not be for me to make as a judge. Those would be for policy-making bodies, whether federal or at the state level.
Fair enough. Judge Saporita, you talked about your private practice. How many years were you in private practice?
I was in private practice for just over 29 years.
So you had to make decisions almost on a daily basis whether you would accept the client or not.
Correct.
What were your standards?
Well, they were really the standards that were established by my late father, and his goal was to help people, and it depended upon the level of help that they needed, and generally speaking, from the perspective of help, it may have included people that had means and people who had no means, and it depended really upon their level of help.
What about the issue of popularity or public acceptance when choosing a client? What was your standard?
We really had no standard on popularity or unpopularity. Our standard was to help our clients through various legal dilemmas and to make rough waters smooth for them throughout the course of our representation. And so we weren't looking for limelight. We were not publicity seekers. We just practiced law and provided what we felt was the best representation for our clients.
Judge Vaca, your background as a prosecutor includes a lot of cases. Do you recall roughly how many cases you were involved in as a prosecutor?
Senator, I was a prosecutor for 13 years. I prosecuted thousands of cases, and as you discussed earlier, reading the statement from Senator Schumer's office, I prosecuted child abuse cases for 10 years of the 13 years I was a prosecutor. And so hundreds of child abuse cases, most of them violent felonies.
Can a criminal defendant feel like they're going to get a fair treatment from you as a judge, and if you're fortunate enough to be approved for this position?
Yes, absolutely, Senator. This is my 4th year as a judge, and I listen to both sides in every case. I give fair consideration to the arguments that they make and apply the applicable law. And as I mentioned earlier, I grew up with a criminal defense attorney in my family. My father was a criminal defense attorney since I was young. And I grew up with this balance. And so I was a prosecutor. I have my father's influence. And as a judge, I make a commitment of mine to make decisions independent and based on the law.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of you. Judge Saporito,
Yes.
you and Senator Casey went to high school together?
Yes, we did, Senator.
Did you ever see Senator Casey try to sneak a beer past Jesus in high school?
I never saw that, Senator.
Oh, okay. Wise answer. Judge Vaca, you are a member of an organization called the National Association Pacific American Bar Association, are you not?
I was, Senator. My membership lapsed at the beginning of this year, but I was a member for 2 years.
Well, my record shows you were a member for 22 years.
Senator, that was a mistake, and I actually sent a letter after I saw that mistake to the committee, so it was 2 years.
Okay. And I'll call it the NAP ABA, is that the correct acronym?
I think NAPABA.
NAPABA?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And NAPABA is funded by Mr. George Soros, is it not?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the funding. I was a member and I paid the dues, but I had no contact with any of the members there, and so that's why I let my membership lapse.
Well, its website says that it's funded by the Open Society Foundations, which are founded by Mr. George Soros. Now, NAPABA in March of 2023, while you were still a member, NAPABA issued a statement, and it said that it supports allowing transgender and intersex girls and women to participate in all sports. Is that correct?
Senator, I'm not familiar with NAPABA's statement, so I'll take your word for it.
You didn't know anything about that?
No, Senator, I joined the organization because I thought it would give me a community of other Asian American attorneys and judges, but I didn't have any interaction with anyone in the group. I didn't attend any meetings or vote, and so I'm not aware of that statement or any of other statements made by NAPABA.
So this is all an epiphany to you. Is that right?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. NAPABA also issued a statement that said the following. It supports state and local governmental entities that choose not to honor ICE detainer requests and that do also decline to detain individuals solely on the basis of an ICE detainer request. So NAPABA opposes supporting ICE. Is that correct?
From what you just read, Senator, I guess I haven't read that statement, but I can tell you, Senator, that I don't ascribe to any of those statements that you just read to me.
Okay. Judge, in October of 2020, you ran for judge, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And on a talk radio interview, here's what you said. I'm going to quote.
Okay.
It's okay. We also need to recognize the effects of racism on our criminal justice system. Institutional racism impacts all of society. I think that is amplified in our criminal justice system. We see that in the disproportionate number of black men and women being incarcerated and convicted, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
Senator, I haven't listened to that particular show, but I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, okay. What do you think our criminal justice system is institutionally racist, do you?
Senator, I don't believe that our court system, by its nature, is racist.
Why did you say this then?
Well, what I meant by that was that I believe there are racial disparities in our communities.
Yeah, but that's not, we both know there's racism in every society, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what you said. You said the criminal justice system is not just racist, it's institutionally racist. And then you said that, I'm going to quote your words, not mine, the disproportionate number of black men and women incarcerated and convicted are because of race. Did you say that?
Senator, what I was talking about was the racial disparities in...
And you said it solely has to do with the color of a person's skin. You really believe that, Judge?
Well, no, Senator, I don't believe that at all.
Why did you say it? You said it, you were running for judge, you said it in front of God and country on a live.
What I said, Senator, was that I recognize that racial disparities in our community can influence rates of incarceration.
That's not what you said. You're a political activist, aren't you, Judge?
No, not at all, Senator.
Yeah. Okay, I'm over. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Senator Welch.
Thank you very much. A couple things. Judge Saporito, you've been in the same community for all your life. I guess your dad was there before that, so long time person in many different roles. How's this new position that you're a candidate for going to help you continue your service to the community?
Senator, I am a proud member of the community in which I live and serve, and I have always been. And I'm a proud member of the Middle District of Pennsylvania as well, and our service extends to 33 of Pennsylvania's 67 counties. And so we service all of those counties in our district. But I sit in Wilkes-Barre, which is in Luzerne County, as a magistrate judge. And I've always been active in the community. I've been encouraged to be active in the community by my parents, and to the extent that I can.
Did you start in your father's? Your dad had a law firm?
He did. He started in 1946 upon his return from the United States Navy.
Wow, that's amazing. And then you served for several years as a public defender. That was a job I had as well.
I did, in Luzerne County as a part-time assistant public defender.
So when you were part-time, did you also do private practice as well?
I did. I was quite busy, and my wife can attest to that.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And Judge Abelson, you've had a variety of roles. I want to just get you to comment on your experience in the jury system, both as a judge and also as a trial lawyer. You want to just take the opportunity to comment on your views on the jury system and the role it plays, and how you would see your role in relationship to the jury system should you be confirmed.
Sure, Senator. Our founders of this country considered the jury a vital part of our society, and it is enshrined in criminal cases in the Sixth Amendment. As a as a sitting magistrate judge, and if confirmed as a district judge, part of my obligation in upholding all aspects of the Constitution would be upholding the vital role of the jury in our system.
Thank you. And Judge Vaca, I noticed in your bio something I quite respect and admire. You speak a lot to high school classes.
I do, Senator. And so, as I mentioned before, for 10 years as a prosecutor, I worked very closely with children, advocating for them. And it was something that I loved to do, I found very meaningful. And now as a judge, I want to continue that to connect with young people. I think it's very important.
So how does that go? I mean, are the kids interested or bored?
They're very interested. And you wouldn't believe how many questions I get. I mean, it's hard to get through, the lecture because there are so many questions, and they're curious about what I do and what the attorneys do, and I really enjoy talking to the kids and exposing them to the court system.
Well, I hope if you are confirmed, I hope you keep doing that. I think that's a very useful thing. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Butler?
Quick questions as well, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Judge Abelson, Judge Saporito, I'd like to just give you the opportunity to talk a bit about judicial philosophy and the experiences of your early careers that helped to form and shape your judicial philosophy. Judge Abelson, in your opening remarks, you made care to mention Catherine Blake. And your experience as a clerk with both her as well as the Honorable Andre Davis. How do you believe this experience, the experience with those two justices, have helped to inform your judicial philosophy and how you would show up as a judge in the district court if you were confirmed?
Thank you, Senator Butler. I'm pleased to have any opportunity to speak about Judge Blake and Judge Davis, who are models of judging in so many different ways and were an inspiration to me as I began my legal career. They were devoted to every aspect of the job in terms of upholding the law, following the law, taking every case, every litigant who appeared before them as if their case was the most important case, because to them it very well was and could have been. And making sure that in every decision that they made and continue, in Judge Blake's case, continue to make, thoroughly explain in clear language the basis for their decisions so that everybody who appears before them feel fully heard and understood.
Thank you. And Judge Saporito, you, as Senator Welch noted, your time in Luzerne County and your experience with Judge D'Alessandro, Judge Aguilo, and your time at the Family Court Division in Wilkes-Barre. Those are some life-shaping experiences. How did they inform your philosophy if you were confirmed for this position?
Well, the judge that I clerked the most for there was Judge Agello, and he had a very kind demeanor, and he was very respectful to lawyers and litigants, and that was a big influence on my philosophy as well. And over the course of my career as a practitioner, I tried many jury trials to verdict, and I got to see one of the most important aspects of a practitioner and a judicial officer is the ability to listen to the witnesses, listen to clients, listen to jurors, and as a judicial officer, I think that's the best trait that anyone could have, is the ability to listen and to have patience and tolerance. And so my philosophy generally is formed on those traits, and everybody that comes into the courtroom that I am privileged to serve in, I treat everyone with courtesy, dignity, and respect. And that includes lawyers, parties, witnesses, jurors, court staff, court security staff, cleaning staff, everybody that walks into that courtroom is treated the same, with courtesy, dignity, and respect. And that came early on by observation and seeing what worked throughout the process. And so I live by that every day, that I'm privileged to serve, and if I'm fortunate enough to be confirmed, I pledge to you that I will continue to do that.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Butler. I want to thank the nominees. For those who are new to this process, it may seem rather cursory that in a matter of 2 hours we could consider so many nominees, but I will assure you that each and every one of them has been carefully scrutinized, first by the White House and then by investigative agencies, and then finally by this committee and its staff. And they go into depth in terms of their background. I would also say that anybody who completes this arduous questionnaire, I think, is entitled to a seat on this federal court. It is a challenge, and you all three, I'm sure know that. I thank my colleagues for their participation today. There may be some written questions coming your way. I hope you can respond by Wednesday, June 12th, if you receive those questions. And with that, the Senate Judiciary Committee stands adjourned.